Yeah. Yeah, the first thing I don't know. They got my alarm clock now, and I'm like very nervous about it. Like, we have that thing on me, so I like use it. I know it is stuff, but I don't. Yeah. So they got a company come from far away. I know why you're yeah. That's good.
So, first, there's a possibility small things will pop up through all of the Dr. Derek,
Good to know. I think most of them are probably in at this point, so if we can start facing that way, I think there's a chance that Eric might pop out that way. A few more people came out with it. See? She's in the group, but apparently she's like on the yeah. Right now they're gonna be. I would say I'll let you know if I see someone coming. A lot of them come around without. Especially if there's no one.
I don't know, and this hand on the chair, elbow, you know.
Hey, Senator Romney. Are you concerned at all that moving forward to kill this sort of vacancy might lift the control of the Senate, might lose the majority?
I'm doing what I believe the Constitution and the President requires, and I'd like to see a conservative court.
This, and even before this happened, there was a lot of talk about what's
I make that mistake.
And there was a lot of talk among those who
Make it worth it.
when they say that, because it's families that all all three of them should be public accountable. And if they're released, if they're not safe, and again, you're part of your how do you make that decision? A lot of concern about what's going on. Protest. Obviously,
And it's the priority.
Also,
But I really on that. If you want to try and pick it, that's if you constitute, that's just
Taylor's family definitely disappointed with the outcome. I would keep that on. This is why it's so clear as to why the opposition showed up, why so many people that don't want to using a battery again, officers have said they announced themselves that they that is the story that was dead. So yes, they had they had did not officers announced themselves.
She's in the nursery, yeah, she's around. Yeah. Yeah. She's great. On the Senate side, it's just right now. They're out around that campaign stuff. No stories. It's like necessary. The news were really focused on the campaign. And then on the health side, Parkinson, then people on. Usually around 2. They wrap up, yeah. But it's
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. I know that many in Louisville, across the Commonwealth and country, have been anxiously awaiting the completion of our investigation into the death of Miss Breonna Taylor. Prior to this announcement, I spoke with Ms. Palmer, Breonna Taylor's mother, to share with her the results from the grand jury. Many of you in this room know that I had the opportunity last month to meet in person with her and other members of Miss Taylor's family, including Miss Bianca Austin and Miss Janiyah Palmer. I want to once again publicly express condolences. Every day, this family wakes up to the realization that someone they loved is no longer with them. There's nothing I can offer today to take away the grief and heartache this family is experiencing as a result of losing a child, a niece, a sister, and a friend. What I can provide today are the facts. My office has worked long and hard to recover, analyze, and scrutinize since accepting this case in mid-May. I urge everyone listening today to not lose sight of the fact that a life has been lost, a tragedy under any circumstances. The decision before my office as the special prosecutor in this case is not to decide if the loss of Ms. Taylor's life was a tragedy, The answer to that question is unequivocally yes. There's no doubt that this is a gut-wrenching, emotional case. The pain that many people are feeling is understandable. I deeply care about the value and sanctity of human life and deserves protection. In this case, a human life is lost. We cannot forget that. My job as a special prosecutor in this case was to put emotions aside, investigate the facts to determine if criminal violations of state law resulted in the loss of Ms. Taylor's life. This included examining the actions of Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, Detective Brett Hankinson, and Detective Miles Cosgrove, 3 officers who fired their weapons in the early morning hours of March 13th.
What do you think the chances are?
Working with our federal partners on this case, it was determined that while we would share information to advance our respective investigations, we must also maintain some level of separation to ensure the integrity of each investigation. When examining issues regarding potential civil rights violations, we determined that any such violation are better addressed through a federal-led investigation. Issues involving potential criminal acts concerning the shootings are better addressed by a state-led investigation. With this in mind, our investigation focused on the events that took place in Ms. Taylor's apartment on March 13th. In the months since taking this case, a dedicated team of prosecutors and investigators, more than 200 years of combined career experience, conducted a thorough investigation to better understand the events that led to Ms. Taylor's death. The team is here with me today. We want to personally and publicly thank them for the tireless work. These men and women are true public servants who for months have shown up every day with a desire for one thing, and that is to seek the truth. We decided while we would examine materials gathered by LMPD's Public Integrity Unit, we would need to conduct our own independent investigation and start from scratch in the interest of thoroughness, fairness, and finding the truth. There was no video or body camera footage of the officers' attempted execution of a search warrant at Ms. Taylor's residence. Video footage begins at the point that area patrol officers arrive at the location. Therefore, the sequence of events from March 13th had to be pieced together through ballistics evidence, 911 calls, police radio traffic, and interviews. We utilized information from the Kentucky State Police, local medical examiners, as well as working with the FBI crime lab in Quantico to secure a trajectory analysis and ballistics report. The team conducted interviews in this case, spent thousands of hours examining all of the available evidence. We concluded our last interview, in this case, this past Friday. Began our grand jury presentation on Monday. As long as the case is legally safe for our legal system, we can only speak in general terms about our independent investigation and findings. As the prosecutor, I am prohibited by the Kentucky Rules of Professional Conduct from making public comments that could in any way prejudice this case as it moves forward. Each state has different rules about what prosecutors can and cannot say. The Kentucky rules are clear that I'm prohibited from making comments that could sway public opinion or heighten public condemnation of those involved in the case. These are crucial rules to ensure due process under the Constitution. When prosecutors prematurely release information about the case to the public, they can risk justice by poisoning the jury pool, violating the accused's rights to a fair trial, and even jeopardizing the final verdict. The success of our legal system is predicated on the principle that the accused is innocent until proven guilty. Despite passions, opinions, the desire for every detail to be known, the rule of law must apply. Justice must be done. In the early morning hours of March 13th, officers from LMPD executed a search warrant at 3003 Springfield Drive, Apartment 4. This was Miss Breonna Taylor's residence. The officers were advised by security to knock and announce their presence in serving this specific search warrant. The scope of our investigation did not include the obtainment of that warrant by LMPD's Criminal Interdiction Division. Federal law enforcement partners are conducting that investigation. Sergeant Mattingly and Detectives Cosgrove and Hankinson had no known involvement in the preceding investigation or payment of the search warrant. They were called into duty as extra personnel to effectuate the service of the search warrant. They only had information conveyed to them during their prior briefing. Evidence shows that officers both knocked and announced their presence at the apartment. The officers' statements about their announcement are corroborated by an independent witness who was near in proximity to apartment 4. In other words, the warrant was not served as a no-knock warrant. The officers were unable to get anyone to answer or open the door to apartment 4. The decision was made to breach the door. After breaching the door, Sergeant Mattingly was the first and only officer to enter the residence. Sergeant Mattingly identified two individuals standing beside one another at the end of the hall, a male and a female. In his statement, he says that the male was holding a gun, arms extended in a shooting stance. Sergeant Mattingly saw the man's gun fire, heard a boom, and immediately knew he was shot as a result of feeling heat in his upper thigh. Kenneth Walker fired the shot that hit Sergeant Mattingly. There is no evidence to support that Sergeant Mattingly was hit by friendly fire from other officers. Mr. Walker admitted he fired one shot.
Is wire still showing?
Was the first to shoot.
Is the IFB wire still showing?
In addition to all the testimony, the ballistics report shows that the round that struck Sergeant Mattingly was fired from a 9mm handgun. The LMPD officers fired 40 caliber handguns. Sergeant Mattingly returned fire down the hallway.
Are you holding it?
Yeah,
Mattingly fired 6 shots. Almost
All right, thank you.
simultaneously, Detective Cosgrove, also in the doorway, shot 16 times. This all took place in a matter of seconds.
Just need an IFB number.
In total, 6 bullets struck Ms. Taylor.
Right.
Medical evidence obtained
Faisal.
by our team indicates that only one shot was fatal. Further medical evidence shows that Ms. Taylor would have died from a fatal shot within a few seconds to 2 minutes after being struck. Detective Hankinson fired his weapon 10 times, including from a outside sliding glass door.
I need that IFB number.
Window.
Okay.
Some bullets traveled through apartment 4 and into apartment 3 before some exited that apartment. At the time, 3 residents of apartment 3 were at home, including a male, a pregnant female, and a child.
7406.
Conclusive evidence that any bullets fired from Detective Hankinson's weapon struck
we are in.
Taylor. KSP ballistics analysis did not identify which of the 3 officers fired the fatal shot. After receiving that information, I asked the FBI crime lab to conduct its own analysis to see if they reached the same results. The FBI ballistics analysis concluded the fatal shot was fired by Detective Cosgrove.
Hey, what's up?
Our office looked at both
how's it going, guys?
reports to determine if there were major differences in the procedures used by each
10-9-8-7-6-5-4-3-2-1. Today begins 3 days of public mourning. Ruth Bader Ginsburg casket arriving this morning on the steps of the Supreme Court, while back on Capitol Hill and the White House.
Each lab is highly respected for their work. There was nothing our investigators could point to,
Thank you.
nor anything provided by the respective agencies.
Yeah,
that directly explains why.
Actually,
one
also
lab
there's a
made
little
call
like mix
while
minus
another
or
did not.
reverberation in that.
I think it is worth repeating again that our investigation
Is
found
that,
Mattingly and Cosgrove were
Going to
justified
continue, you think?
in their use of force after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Secondary to this justification, the KSP and FBI ballistics analysis
Specialists on
reached different
they're
conclusions,
telling you.
creating a reasonable doubt in the evidence
Yeah.
about who fired the fatal shot.
Okay, just making sure.
I certainly understand the public's desire.
We do
for
have a
answers.
hit at
Many have questioned the length of
at
the
2:05.
investigation.
No, because they're in special coverage.
Simply put, we
Oh,
had
okay,
to try every means necessary to determine who fired the fatal shot before the investigation
Wait,
be
who's that?
completed.
205? Is
With
Fresno
a
in special
thorough
coverage
and
too?
complete knowledge of all evidence collected in this case, lawyers with our Office of Special Prosecutions presented the findings of our independent investigation before a grand jury comprised of Jefferson County residents beginning on Monday and concluding today. Fletcher v. Graham, Kentucky Supreme Court says that the grand
Today
jury
begins
has
3
convened
days of public
but
mourning
balance
related
functions.
Justice's casket
one
arriving at the
hand,
Supreme Court today while
purpose
back
is
on
to
Capitol Hill,
investigate
the White House.
allegations
There
of
is
criminal
a bitter
conduct
battle
to determine if there is probable
to
cause
fill her
to
seat
believe that a
for the
crime
November election.
has been committed. On the other,
Thank you.
the grand jury serves to protect the public against unfounded criminal prosecutions.
Ginsburg's casket will be here in public view at the
The grand
Supreme Court
jury
for the
is
next
unique
2 days.
in our
President
criminal
Trump
justice
says that he
system
will come here
because it
tomorrow to
operates
pay his
independent
respects.
of the
And then
court
on Friday,
and
she
the
will lie in
prosecutor.
state at the Capitol, the
The
first woman
hallmark
ever to
of
do
the
so,
grand
and only
jury
the
is
second
its
Supreme Court
independence
justice in
from
American
outside
history to have that honor bestowed on them since
This
William
independence is necessary to ensure that justice is done both for the victims and
of the
for the
Supreme Court.
accused.
Number ABC
After
7
hearing the
Eyewitness
evidence
News.
from our team of prosecutors,
Sorry, they're ABC 7
grand
Eyewitness
jury
News, right?
voted to
Channel
return
7.
an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death. The charge of wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class B felony, and if found guilty, the accused can serve up to 5 years for each count. Kentucky law states that a person who is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree is under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger
And they do
death
know we have an 05
or serious physical injury to another person. My office is prepared to prove these charges in trial. However, it's important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. For the last 6 months, we've all heard mention of possible charges that we brought in this case. It's important to understand that all the charges that have been mentioned have specific meanings and ramifications. Criminal homicide encompasses the taking of a life by another. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed and the grand jury agreed Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law, use of force by Mattingly and Cosgrove justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death. The truth is now before us. The facts have been examined. A grand jury comprised of our peers, fellow citizens, has made a decision. Justice is not often easy. It does not fit the mold of public opinion.
Both?
And it does not conform to shifting
Okay, no worries.
standards. It answers only
Hey,
to the facts.
someone from the desk
and to the
texted me
law.
that they think your shot looks
With this
great.
in mind, we must now
I'll let
ask
you know.
ourselves, where do we go from here? Will we continue to
They said it looks like a
prosecute
green
the
screen.
charges brought in this case as it now proceeds to the justice
Yeah,
system
exactly.
and moves to trial? That is our responsibility. And this will be done while the FBI continues its investigation
I'm not even
into
kidding. The light on the
violations,
court is
potential
awesome.
violations of federal law. I know that not everyone will be satisfied with the charges we reported today. My team set out to investigate the circumstances surrounding Ms. Taylor's
Which
death.
one was 559? Is
Did it
that
with
Fresno?
a singular
Okay.
goal
They are in
mind,
special coverage too, by the
pursuing
way.
the truth. Kentuckians deserve no less The city of Louisville deserves no less. Every person has an idea of what they think justice is. My role as special prosecutor in this case is to set aside everything in pursuit of the truth. My job is to get the facts to the grand jury that applies those facts to the law. If we simply act on emotion or outrage, there is no justice. All justice is not justice. Justice sought by violence is not justice. It just becomes revenge. In our system, criminal justice isn't the quest for revenge. It's the quest for truth, evidence, and facts. And the use of that truth is we apply our laws. Our reaction to the truth today is what kind of society we want to be.
I've had that issue before. I wonder if it's
or do we
forget what it was. One of the
that
newsroom was the control
fits our
room, or vice versa.
Do we want the facts?
It's happened
Are we
before where
content
I've
to
tried to call them and I couldn't
accept
get through.
Our own version of events?
I have IFB though.
We as a community must make this decision. I understand that Miss Breonna Taylor's death has become a part of a national story and conversation. But we must also remember the facts and the collection of evidence in this case are different than cases elsewhere in the country. Each is unique and cannot be compared. There will be celebrities, influencers, and activists who, having never lived in Kentucky,
yeah, I got you.
will try to tell us how to feel, suggesting they understand the facts of this case and that they know our community and the Commonwealth better than we do. But they don't. Let's not give in to their attempts to influence our thinking or capture our emotions.
How long do you think?
At the end of the day, it is up to us. We live here together.
Just ballpark,
we work
maybe.
here and raise our families here together. I urge those protesting on the streets to remember this. Peaceful protests are your right as an American citizen. Instigating violence and destruction.
And you don't know how long
you're
going to stick.
I've spoken with
the
both
special.
Mayor Fischer and Governor Beshears.
Yeah, actually,
in the days leading up to this announcement, and I urge them to do what is necessary to maintain law and
the field producer says he's trying to get in touch with
and our people.
I guess the desk or the control room, but nobody's answering.
Ahead,
I guess you would be better
both
equipped.
as we pursue this case through the criminal system, and as we address
no worries.
the pain
so
in the
should he
Louisville
keep
community.
calling, or what's a good
part
number?
Of the healing process, when tragedy occurs,
Okay.
we must mourn. We must also do everything we can to prevent it from happening again. Today,
They said that
consistent with
no
that
outside
view,
calls are working for
I'm
them.
announcing that I will create a task force to review the process.
Well, basically,
process
they
for
don't know when they're going
securing,
to get out of
reviewing,
coverage, and
and
it's kind of up to
executing
us.
search warrants in Kentucky. The task force will consist of a variety of stakeholders,
Okay.
including citizens, members from the law
Yeah,
enforcement
exactly.
community,
So I would say, I guess, yeah, if
representatives
it's
from
still
the
11
judiciary, defense
on the hour,
attorneys,
that's fine.
and elected leaders. I'll be issuing an executive order in the coming days to create this task force. I believe conducting
15,
a top to bottom review of the search warrant process is necessary to determine if changes
I'll stick
required
around, and if not, I understand.
and establish
It's, special
best
coverage. I get it.
practices.
Yeah.
You have my word that I will also
of course.
vigorously prosecute the criminal charges announced today.
So they're going to hold
I
us
can
till
assure you that
15,
my team of
and then we'll
prosecutors
see. Yeah.
will continue to give this case their attention and time. We'll also continue to support the good men and women
Yeah, they said
of our
just the
law
phones aren't
enforcement
working.
community who put their lives on the line every day.
Well, I guess it's the
protect
control
and
room.
to
I don't know
serve.
about the newsroom.
And I will
Oh, really?
fight
Okay.
for those across our state who feel like their voice isn't heard, who feel marginalized, judged, and powerless to bring about change. In a world that is forcing many of us to pick a side, I choose the side of justice. I choose the side of truth. I choose a path that moves the Commonwealth forward.
You guys still have our package and everything too.
healing.
So, yep. Thank you.
You have that choice as well. Let's make
canceled
it
live shot.
together. Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you.
I'll now take some questions.
what the racial and gender makeup of the jury was.
I will get into the specifics of the makeup of the grand jury. So,
Yeah.
Based on evidence, there's nothing conclusive to say that Detective Hankinson's any of his bullets hit Miss Taylor.
So,
Based on what you're saying today, the grand jury basically found that one officer
Well, as I said from the beginning, and I appreciate that question, this is a tragedy. And sometimes the law, the criminal law, is not adequate to respond to a tragedy. And I fully acknowledge that. And I know many that are watching today and those that are listening recognize that as well. But the response is that the grand jury was given all of the evidence, presented all of the information, and ultimately made the determination that Detective Hankinson was the one to be indicted. Grand jury proceeding secret, so I'm not going to get into the specifics of details about that proceeding. What I will say is that we presented all of the information, and we ultimately made the determination about whether to charge in this instance. They decided to indict Detective Hankinson. I'm sorry, say that again.
That we might be made the righteousness of God in him. I want to see y'all in heaven.
Well, my role as special prosecutor in this case is to provide the information and facts to the grand jury. Detective Cosgrove and Sergeant Mattingly were justified in returning fire because they were fired upon. I'll leave it to others to make determinations. We have vigorous self-defense laws in the state, and that is something that existed prior to this case. I'll let others make judgments about that. Yes, sir.
One big question surrounding this case is whether or not the officers knocked and announced their presence. Talk about the evidence that you bring to that they did announce.
Yes, statements that were made by officers there the night or the morning of March 13th show that they did knock and announce. The important point here is that information was corroborated by another witness who was in close proximity to apartment 4, who corroborated that information.
before you
Said
sum
that
it
there
up
was
the
a
rapture,
knocking and
yeah, let
announcing
me
by
get my
the
livestock
officers.
yard.
The witness was a civilian. To your question, I think it, again, it's important to step back and recognize that what we did was uncover all the information and facts related to the morning of March 13th, and then provided that information to the grand jury. The grand jury had every piece of detail needed to make their assessment and their judgments. And ultimately, their conclusion was that the decision needed to be made to indict Mr. Hankin.
Mr. Cameron, Rukmini Kalimaki with the New York Times. Right here, sir.
Yes,
Hi, 2 questions for you. Number 1, you said that she was shot 6 times, yet her death certificate says 5. Can you please explain the discrepancy? And the second thing is, journalists in this room, myself included, have taken apart that apartment complex looking for witnesses to the point that you made about the knocking and announcing. Of a dozen witnesses that I spoke to, only one, a man who was directly upstairs, heard them announce. Do you think that's enough in the middle of the night when somebody is asleep for just one person in a tight-knit apartment block to have heard that? Is that a sufficient way of announcing?
Well, let me try to answer your second question first. Your question was, is it enough for me? I think the more pertinent question is, what was the evidence provided to the grand jury? What was sufficient for their purposes? They got to hear and listen to all the testimonies and made the determination that Detective Hankinson was the one that needed to be indicted, knowing all of the relevant points that you made. As to your first question, can you repeat it one more time?
Your death certificate says 5, and yet you are saying 6. Today's the first time I'm hearing 6.
So there is a bullet that was lodged, and the bullet might be too generous a term. There was an object that was lodged into one of her feet, and so that is what is being referred to as the 6th, I guess, projectile.
Are you going to release the full grand jury report?
Can you say that one more time?
Are you going to release the full grand jury report?
Well, I am right now, because there is a pending indictment, and I think it is our practice, there is an ongoing FBI investigation, to revisit that question. But at this point, I think it's appropriate for us to release any information. Well, that is what the evidence shows, is that there is nothing conclusive to demonstrate that well, again, all the evidence is given to the grand jury, and they make a decision on the danger of the charge to file to indict against Mr. Hankinson.
Thank you.
So,
well, your last question about providing information. In any investigation, criminal investigation, the best practice, and this is whether on the state or federal level, is to not make too many specific comments about the investigation because you do not want to compromise that investigation. There are also ethical considerations as investigators and prosecutors that we're responsible to abide by as well. Some of those obligations continue now because we have a responsibility to pursue the prosecution against Detective Hankinson. It's my judgment very early on that we needed to take this case in the Attorney General's office. As you know, the Commonwealth's attorney was conflicted out of this case because of another matter that he was pursuing. I could have farmed the case out to another Commonwealth's attorney in one of our 120 counties. Instead, I did not do that because the resources that we have to bring to bear and the relationships that we have with our fellow partners, in my judgment, were needed to uncover the truth in this case. Part of the reason the investigation took so long is because we needed to make sure that we were doing a thorough job of looking at all the facts, gathering all the materials, interviewing witnesses, making sure that all of our people felt confident in presentations to the grand jury. I was as late as Friday, we were still interviewing people in this case. And so the length of it is because this case deserved thorough and fair analysis. That was needed and deserved
whether the confirmation vote should
by
be held
Breonna,
before the election or after?
and by her family,
My
for the
preference
officers
is to do it
involved,
before,
for the community
but
of Louisville, and for
that's
the
not my
Commonwealth.
call.
We
That's up
needed
to the
have a
majority
thorough
leader.
investigation. We
He's
also got the FBI
he's about this
involved
tall,
in
kind of
terms the
taciturn.
ballistics report.
Why
you
do
know,
you
We
do it
needed
before?
Low
additional,
blood pressure.
their
I just think we have plenty of
ability
time.
to scrutinize and
I
make
look
an
at
independent
it,
assessment
look
as
at
well.
the timing
And so
question
the
in
length
terms
of the
of,
investigation,
do we have a
was
sufficient
a
amount of
reflection,
time to
I
get
hope
ready
people
for a
understand,
hearing? And
of
when I
how
say we,
important it
I
was that
mean
we
the
got this
nominee
right.
as
We didn't
well
want
as
to
the
rush it,
members of the committee.
and we did
I
not.
spend a lot
And
of
I'm
time getting
grateful
ready
to the team that
for
is behind me,
confirmation hearings, and I
for the
spend
work
even
that
more
they did.
time
Look,
getting
over
ready for
200
Supreme
years
Court
of combined
confirmation
experience.
hearings.
These are prosecutors and
And then do we
investigators
have a
who don't
sufficient
care
amount of
about
time
political distinctions,
to actually
don't
allow
care
everyone to have their
about
say
influence in any
and to
particular
have their
regard. What
questions
they care about
answered
is the truth.
both orally and
We,
in writing
presented that to the grand jury.
in the confirmation hearing?
Sorry.
And I think we have plenty of time.
Do you
I
worry
won't get
about
into
what
our
this could
private
mean for some
conversation
of your
was.
Republican
ma'am.
colleagues who are facing reelection
What do you
right
say
now?
to people who say this is just another example
no.
of the Black community not
I
getting full
think
justice?
the,
And what is specifically do
the
you plan to
attitude
do
of
to
most
calm a
people,
community that's long been hurting? And do you
and let me
understand
say,
the
look,
anger
I'm not
that people
naive.
might
I
feel?
understand we're in the middle
certainly
of Senate
understand
elections,
the
and I
pain,
get that, and it's human nature to think
that
about
has been
your
brought
own
about
election
by
because
the
you desperately want to
direct
serve.
loss of
But
Ms.
I think
Taylor.
most people
I understand that.
are understand that
As
of all of our
Attorney General who is
responsibilities,
responsible
this
for
is
all,
one of the
120
most
counties
solemn,
in
if
terms of
not the
being
most
the
solemn.
chief
And this
legal
is
officer,
important.
the chief
And the
law
Supreme
enforcement
Court
officer.
is
I
an
understand that.
equal branch
I
of
understand that
government,
as a black man.
and we want to do it
How
right.
painful this is.
I'm looking forward to the hearings. I'm
which
going
is why it
into
was
it.
so
I will
incredibly
go
important
into it prepared. I'm
to make
looking
sure
for
that we
someone
did
of
everything we possibly could
intelligence, of
to
appropriate
uncover every
character and
fact.
temperament.
And I
When
know,
you hear your
look,
Democratic
this
colleagues
team,
calling you and
myself,
other Republicans
the members of the
hypocrites for going
representatives of the
forward
Attorney
with
General's
this
office have
nomination,
taken a
what's
lot
your
of criticism
reaction?
and scrutiny.
Well, I've heard
that
my friend
scrutiny
Senator
in many ways
Schumer
was misplaced because there was not a day
make a lot of
where people in this
arguments,
office didn't go to sleep thinking about this case.
and I get
And
it.
it wasn't
You
a
know,
day when the first thing on our minds
there's a lot of
was
drama,
getting to the truth in this case.
and there will be a lot of
And,
things said back and forth about who said
obviously,
what to
again,
whom.
criminal law
I
is not
I
meant,
approach it
to respond
in a
to
pretty
every sorrow
basic
and grief.
manner,
And
and
that is true
is
here.
that
But
the
my heart
I've read the
breaks,
Constitution. I've read the
for
provisions
the
on
loss of
filling a
Ms. Taylor.
Supreme Court
And I've
vacancy.
said that repeatedly.
The
My mother,
Constitution is
something was to happen to me.
unaffected by the electoral calendar. And if the president nominates someone to fill this vacancy, I will
I
vote
find it very
in
hard.
the Judiciary Committee,
And
and I
I've
will
seen that
vote
pain
for the
on Ms.
House.
Palmer's
If that's
face.
the case, then
I've seen that
why
pain
did
in the
Republicans
community.
hold up Merrick Garland's nomination
You
8 months
will
ago?
have
And
to
what our
ask
responsibility
them.
in the
I
AG's office
didn't ever make any
was to make sure that
determination
we
like that. You will have
uncovered
to ask
every
them.
fact,
I
that
can
we
only
utilized
speak
every
for me.
resource that we could
But
bring to
I
bear
intend to, if the
uncover
president makes a
the
nomination,
facts
I
and the
intend to
truth.
vote.
And that's ultimately
And
what
let
we
me
presented to
assure
the
you,
grand jury. On the question of what I'm going to do,
if the shoe were on the foot,
I've talked to
the other foot,
partners in the
Senator
community
Schumer would be
about
doing the
helping
same
to
thing.
be
And
a
we both know
constructive
that.
member of
Do you
any
have a preference
conversations
based
moving
on
forward.
the? That's all I got.
I recognize in my remarks, I mentioned the fact that we'll be establishing a task force in the coming days ahead to look at best practices for so there is a lot that we can do to help.
Sir, this is Maria Sacchetti with the Washington Post. Just had a couple of quick questions.
I
please.
hear your voice. Okay,
Hi, sorry over here in the back. Just wanted to double check were manslaughter. Did the grand jury ever consider the charges of manslaughter, reckless homicide, and if not, please explain why? And do you anticipate any other charges in this case?
I apologize. Could you say that a little louder? I think I got.
Sure. Did the grand jury ever consider manslaughter or reckless homicide or those kinds of charges? And if not, please explain why. Do you anticipate any other charges, or is this it?
I won't get into the specifics again of the proceedings themselves are secret, but what I will say is that our team walked them through every homicide offense and also presented all of the information that was available to the grand jury, and then the grand jury was ultimately the one that made the decision about indicting Detective Hankinson for wanton endangerment. I think that in terms of what happened in the hours of March 16th, in terms of that particular or specific date, and what happened that night in the apartment, I think it is unlikely that there will be any additional prosecutions that come from that event itself.
Attorney General, so can you go into the conclusion over the fatal shot that was fired and kind of what the issue was there in terms of determining that? And then also, did you present to the grand jury with any charges against Natalie and Prosper?
Well, so as to your first question, what I think you asked about was, yes, the reports that were provided to us by the Kentucky State Police and then the FBI as it relates to ballistics. So initially, we got the report from Kentucky State Police about making the determination into that fatal shot. And so again, with the relationships that we have with our federal law enforcement community, namely the FBI, I thought it imperative that we utilize that resource. And so they undertook an independent analysis and review and conducted or provided a ballistics report. There is nothing that this team was able to glean suggesting that there was an objective reason for why FBI was able to conclusively or definitively state that Mr. Cosgrove fired the fatal shot. Both, again, KSP, their lab, well regarded, well respected, FBI, regarded and respected. That said, it certainly creates some issue in terms of providing that information to the grand jury and providing that in a subsequent prosecution. And so it was, from our judgment, important to provide both of those to the grand jury and ultimately let them make a determination about what to do with that information.
Presented with charges for Madden?
I'm sorry.
Were they presented with any charges for Madden?
Well, what I would say is that they will walk through all the homicide offenses and with that information and the information and facts that were provided to them that we uncovered in our investigation, they made the determination that Detective Hankinson was the one that needed to be indicted here. Yes, ma'am. So what I would say is, there's obviously I don't want to get into the proceedings related to Mr. Walker. That's a separate. So I'm not going to ask any comment on that. This team behind me presented to the grand jury, and your other question was about the racial makeup of. Well, I'm black. I speak for the entire department. I hope that will satisfy that question. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I know that you said the investigation has obviously taken months and it was presented to the grand jury Monday. Can you tell us, when did the grand jury actually, how long did they deliberate? Did they begin on Monday or did they begin Tuesday? And that was this week, correct?
The grand jury was presented with the information today. I don't want to get into the specifics of when they began their deliberations, but I will say that they started early Monday and concluded sometime before noon. So they heard everything they needed to hear. We didn't withhold anything from them, and I hope that satisfies your question.
General, can you tell me a little bit more about this task force? You know, Senate President Stivers and Representative Scott are introducing warrant bills for the next legislative session. Are they going to be on this task force perchance? And will you be taking some of the information from the bills they pre-filed to work with Congress?
Well, I don't want to put obviously the cart before the horse, but I did mention in the remarks that we are certainly going to have elected leaders on this task force, and I imagine some of the policy questions and some of the policy proposals that have already been put forward have entered into the public conversation will be a part of this task force. But make sure that people recognize that this task force is being established not to demonize any one side or any one department or agency. I think it's a healthy thing for the Attorney General from time to time to be a part of the conversation with all 120 counties. I'm not even talking or singling out any county specifically, but with all 120 counties about best practices that can be utilized. I had a recent conversation with somebody that said there is always room for improvement. I think that's important in any industry, important in any job. And so as part of my role as the Attorney General, I certainly recognize the part I have to play in making sure that all of our systems of government are improved upon, whether it be because of a particular matter that occurred or because from time to time it's just the responsible thing to do.
Did any of the officers ask? Did any of the officers ask to testify or present evidence to the grand jury, and were they allowed to?
Well, what I'll say on that is, again, I don't want to get into the specifics, but testimony was heard by the grand jury of all sorts of witnesses and folks. And so, again, all relevant information is provided to the grand jury, usually for them to make their assessment. Yes, sir.
When you look at the analysis of the path of the bullets, how was it that Kenneth Walker, who fired the shot at the officers, was not hit, and Breonna Taylor was hit so many times?
Well, that's part of the tragedy. And again, I don't want to get into the specifics, but the fact that she was hit breaks my heart. It breaks the collective heart of all the country. But I don't want to get, because we have now a open prosecution, I don't want to get too into the details of the trajectories themselves.
Two follow-up questions. One, I understand that the names of grand jurors aren't asked, but what rule or standard prevents you from releasing the racial makeup of the grand jury? And number two, you mentioned that Cosgrove fired the fatal shot, but could you clarify how many shots in all that hit Ms. Taylor were fired by Mattingly, and how many shots that hit Ms. Taylor were fired by Cosgrove?
Well, as to the last question, inconclusive in terms of how many shots each officer were able to identify with that level of specificity. As to the question about the makeup of the grand jury, we might be able to confirm that.
I think that's more sense. Yeah,
Yeah, you know, the fact that this has received so much scrutiny, I think it'd be inappropriate for me to share the information about the makeup of the grand jury, just to the extent I can protect them.
File or recommend that LMPD release it?
Well, look, the role that we have is proceed on ongoing prosecution against the vacancy. And so I think it would be irresponsible at this juncture for this office to release any sort of file, again, because we have this ongoing prosecution. And I'm not going to comment on, and I think I certainly shouldn't be recommending, again, because of the ongoing prosecution, any sort of recommendation as it relates to a release of the file.
We have time for two more questions.
Daniel, okay. Well, I certainly don't think that whether it's the grand jury or all the responsibility of the investigators and prosecutors, it's to find the truth. And so when folks from outside of the Commonwealth suggest or make their preferences and their opinions known, it should have no bearing on our role as prosecutor in this investigative track.
Yes.
Even with folks within the Commonwealth, again, this is a tragedy. I don't want to lose sight of that. And we do have a responsibility to look at the facts as they are. We can't be in the business. I don't think we want a justice system that is in the business of fashioning facts or laws to a particular way. We have to be in the business of presenting the information to the grand jury and ultimately allowing them to make a decision about what to do subsequently.
Last question.
Yes, ma'am. Far in the back. I apologize. Actually, we'll take this last two. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, sir. I wanted to ask if you, if you believe personally that someone should have been charged with homicide or one of the similar charges in this case. And can you please walk us through what happened after the officers knocked on the door? Did they hear an answer? How long did they wait before everything erupted? So both of those questions, please, and thank you very much.
As to your first question, again, this is about what the grand jury decided. One of the misconceptions out there is that the Attorney General's office was in the business of making charges, and that's just simply not the case under Kentucky law. Our role is to present the information to the grand jury. We dispense with that responsibility. We did it after a protracted investigation that uncovered all of the facts. That was our role. That was our responsibility. And we presented everything to the grand jury for them to ultimately make a judgment about what to do next. And in this case, in this instance, they decided to indict Detective Hankinson. As to your other question about what was provided to the grand jury, I can't get into the specifics on that particular issue.
Yes, sir. In the beginning, you said that you spoke with Breonna Taylor's family today. I know you can't tell us word for word what they said to you, but how was the news received?
Well, it was a hard meeting. I won't go any further. I won't elaborate. But it was a difficult meeting, and look, when I ran for this office, I ran because I had some singular ideas in mind. And you never know exactly what issues will be presented with, and what challenges will be presented with. And today is one of those challenges. To have to sit in that room and provide the information to Ms. Palmer, to other members of the Taylor family. It's been a difficult day. This is a difficult day for everyone standing up here. This is a difficult day for those here that have to report this. And it's a very difficult day for Louisville, for Commonwealth, all of the country. I recognize that. And I certainly recognize the responsibility that I have to help in the healing process. As I noted in my remarks, I hope those that are home watching, those that perhaps have ideas about being angry or pained by this decision, I hope we will respond in a manner that respects First Amendment rights, but also respects our responsibility as the Bible talks about loving our neighbors, and that we can do so keeping Breonna Taylor's legacy in mind. So
We'll be covering the
respects
8 p.m. closings on
Louisville, the city I live in, that respects all of our communities. So
But we're doing 7
again,
p.m.
this is a hard day, and no intervening that is not. And all I can offer is that our office uncovered every fact that was relevant to the wee hours, the morning hours of March 13th. We provided that information to the grand jury. You all now, whether you're sitting here, whether you're at home, know the results of that process. Now we have the responsibility to prosecute.
It's a question of whether there's one meeting on Monday
Forward in that
or
matter.
on Friday.
So all of us have a responsibility to work together to find common ground, find ways to love one another, and just be good neighbors. So that's what I implore you all report on this in a responsible manner. That's what I implore those that are watching on television. But we all have the responsibility of coming together now. I hope that you will take that charge seriously. Our governor likes to talk about Team Kentucky, and I believe him earnestly in that charge. I hope that that extends to the results that we'll issue here today. I hope that it extends to all of our neighbors, all of our communities. Thank you, and God bless you.